Kasey Kahne can make more starts in the future, and we need to talk about Kris Wright in the incident that happened at Texas Motor Speedway. What's going on, guys? It's Daniel, and welcome back to another video. We got some NASCAR and other motorsports stories discussed here today on the channel. Let's go ahead and just jump straight into those really quickly. We're going to start by talking about AAA. As with Joe Logano winning the NASCAR Cup Series race at Texas Motor Speedway, this is the first win for AAA as a sponsor in NASCAR. AAA has been a sponsor, I believe, on a car for around 180 to 190 races, I'm pretty sure. And they sponsored Roush back in the day with Mark Martin and came close to winning with Mark, but never could get it done. And they, of course, sponsored other drivers like Kurt Busch. Also sponsored, I believe, Sam Hornish at one point as well when he was with Team Penske. But now, finally, with Joe Logano, AAA has been able to pick up the victory. Congratulations to that sponsor and finally getting wins. We've seen some new sponsors come in and be able to pick up wins. Think about Progressive earlier this year with Denny Hamlin getting their first win in the sport. I think it's a big deal for them to get that first win. A well-deserved win for them nonetheless, and it's a big deal for AAA to finally win as a sponsor in the sport. Pretty awesome and good stuff, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Sebastian Wheldon. Now, earlier this weekend during the Miami weekend for Formula 1, we'll talk about the race here in a little bit, Sebastian Wheldon was able to win the Formula 4 race, which I believe is his first ever Formula 4 win. Now, Sebastian Wheldon is the son of the late Dan Wheldon, and Sebastian, of course, has a development deal with the Andretti Global organization, which, of course, Andretti Global does have some major association with the Cadillac Formula 1 team. Sebastian, from what I know, very, very talented race car driver. He has a lot of potential to be one of the most talented drivers in the sport long term, and I think he's someone that could potentially down the road go to Formula 1. Now, I think down the road he is going to go the IndyCar route because I think he wanted to be like his father and wants to see the IndyCar in the future. But I really hope nonetheless he can have a lot of success in motorsports, so I think he does have a lot of potential to be super, super successful. Congratulations to him on getting the win, a well-deserved win in Formula 4, and I think down the road he probably could end up being in Formula 3 in the not-so-distant future. Now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Texas A&M. As was reported by Adam Stern earlier today that according to him, Texas A&M paid $160,000 for two primary sponsorship races for Stewart-Haas Racing during the playoffs in 2024. I believe both those races were for Chase Briscoe, and I believe Ryan Preece in one of those races as well. He reports that they're paying $275,000 for one race in 2025, which they will also have a big associate with the team throughout the whole entire season. That is kind of crazy. They're jumping from having only $160,000 in two races with Stewart-Haas Racing to the Haas factory team, which is a one-car team. But I guess because they're only doing it for one car and being a full associate sponsor, that's probably a big reason for that. Texas A&M is doing some more stuff going forward down the road as well, some more activation with the team going forward. So I think that is certainly interesting. But I think it's kind of wild to see that Texas A&M is trying to grow their presence in a sense, and it's a big deal. They're paying $160,000 for sponsorship. Pretty wild and crazy stuff. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Cadillac Formula 1. As a report by Adam Stern early this morning that the logo for the Cadillac Formula 1 team has officially been unveiled. Now, Cadillac did their launch last night. They did not announce their drivers who they are going to be for 2026. There's been a lot of rumors. Mick Schumacher apparently was spotted at the event. There's been a lot of reports that Sergio Perez might be one of the front runners. Joe Guan Yu's name is linked as a possibility. Colton Herta's name hasn't mentioned as a possibility as well. But going back to logo, I actually do think it looks really good here. I like the simplicity of it. It does actually look pretty solid overall. And sometimes simplicity is not a bad thing. I think sometimes you need that for people that are kind of new to motorsports. So I think the logo does look good. I think some of the logos they've got in Indy sports especially don't always look the greatest overall. So I think making things very simplistic for the fans, I think that's a very important detail. I like that detail overall. And I think having simplicity is a good thing for fans that are new to this kind of stuff. I like the logo. It looks really good, in my honest opinion. And now we're going ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about IndyCar. As it was announced on Friday or Saturday morning that there are going to be some new tire rules that are going to be coming into place for IndyCar starting this weekend at the San Diego Grand Prix for IndyCar. Now, according to reports from Nathan Brown, teams are now going to be required to have to only not use one set of the primary and alternate tires. They're going to be required to use two sets of the alternate and primary tires throughout the weekend and throughout the races as well. Now, it is noted that you can use used alternate tires used throughout the weekend. I think it's actually used just for the race. This reason they're doing this is to try to create more pit stops, to try to create strategy, because let's be real and honest, the IndyCar product currently at the moment is not that good for IndyCar. So I think they're trying to create a much better product for the fans that want to watch it, because again, IndyCar with the hybrid system is not that good right now. So I think it certainly is an interesting change. I don't think it's going to make the racing product better. Just get rid of the hybrids at this point, please, because the racing product isn't that good in IndyCar right now, and I think it does need to be changed. I hope it does change, and maybe with these new rules coming in, it may make it better, but I'm not sure if it's going to do that, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the Miami Grand Prix. After the IndyCar race had concluded and the NASCAR race is going on, you had the Miami Grand Prix going on. And there was a little bit of concern whether this race is even going to happen in the first place, but it actually ended up happening on time. Max Verstappen, of course, won the pole, but basically him and Oscar Piastri and Lando Norris would be on the front row. Now, of course, Max Verstappen would overdrive the corner and force Lando Norris off the racetrack, because drivers don't really want to race in Formula 1. So if they try to have contact, they try to force each other off the track. Well, Max got the lead. There weren't any penalties, and Oscar Piastri eventually got the race lead, as the McLarens were just much stronger than the rest of the field. The McLarens got out front. By the end of the event, you had Oscar Piastri at about a 4 to 5 second lead. Lando Norris was back there 5, and then I believe you had George Russell, who was 37 seconds behind in third place. Oscar and the McLarens would dominate, and coming off the corner, Oscar would pick up, I believe, his fourth win of 2025, I believe. And I believe this is his fourth win of the season and his fifth career Formula 1 victory. Oscar Piastri has been super dominant in Formula 1. I know that Lando Norris tries to claim himself as the number one driver at that program, but I think that Oscar Piastri is the true number one driver right now at McLaren. I think he's got the best opportunity to win the championship, and unlike Lando, who sometimes can be way in over his head, I think Oscar's kept his head down for the most part, and I think he's been doing a really good job this year. So I think he's got a chance to win his first championship, which I think he will have a chance to do that, and I think he'll do really good the remainder of the year. I think Lando has a chance, but I think right now Oscar is the number one driver in that team, and I think he's got the best chance and opportunity to make that team very successful going forward. I think he will be, and I think he'll be the more successful driver of the two drivers, and I think he might win his first championship this year. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about the IndyCar race at Barber. Before the NASCAR Cup Series race took place at Texas Motor Speedway, you had the IndyCar race going on at Barber. And pretty much this whole entire race was dominated by one driver, and that is Alex Palou. There would not be a single caution for incident, which continues a long stretch. It's been going on for over 300 laps since back to the first race at the Grand Prix of St. Petersburg. Once Alex Palou got the lead, no one could run with him. The only time Alex Palou lost the lead in this race was during green flag pit stops. Outside of that, by the end of the race, Alex Palou had a near 20-second lead over the rest of the field and was able to pick up the win. In my opinion, one of the most unwatchable IndyCar races I think we have seen this year. And it's not been the most watchable IndyCar season so far. I think Alex Palou is a really great driver. He's won 3 of the 4 IndyCar races, and he's very easy going to clinch his championship because he's so dominant right now. He's got the hybrid system figured out. He's won nearly 20 IndyCar races at this point right now, and I think he's got this formula knocked down. So congratulations, Palou, on winning another IndyCar race. He's probably going to win almost every single race. He's a favorite to win the race this weekend at Indianapolis. I think he will be the one to watch out for. I don't know if he's going to win the Indy 500. I think he's got a chance to do that this year with how quick the Ganassi cars were during testing, but I think that Alex Palou will easily win the championship. Congratulations to him on winning his 3rd race of the year, what feels like his 20th career IndyCar win. Congrats to him on picking up the win and picking up the victory. A well-deserved win for him after dominating the whole entire event. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Ryan Blaney. As it was announced on Saturday afternoon that Ryan Blaney has officially become a part owner of the Sharon Speedway. Now, Sharon Speedway is a track that his father, Dave Blaney, had a lot of success at. I believe Ryan Blaney also raced at that track growing up as well. And I believe Dave Blaney has a pretty big ownership stake in that racetrack as well. This, I believe, is the first racetrack that Ryan Blaney has taken ownership of. So this is a really, really big deal for Ryan Blaney, because I know Ryan Blaney grew up this track when it came to racing. But I think it's an awesome deal to see him get that chance and opportunity to become an owner of a racetrack. So I want to see Ryan Blaney get the chance and opportunity to own racetracks down the road. I think he's been a major advocate for short track racing in the past, and I think doing that kind of stuff, because we know his father, he may not have been the best NASCAR driver out there, never drove for great teams, but the guy won a lot of dirt races, a lot of dirt late model races, won a lot of sprint car races at tracks like this. So to see Ryan get the chance and opportunity to own a track is a big deal, like his father has done. And I think he's going to bring a lot to the table going forward and getting the series in a really good direction. And I think, again, people that own tracks, or even series for that matter, I think is a really, really big deal. So congratulations to Ryan Blaney on taking ownership of the track. I think it's really exciting stuff, and it's a big deal to see him get the chance and opportunity to get the shot to own a racetrack like Sharon Speedway. Really exciting stuff to get that chance. And I think it's pretty cool for him, because I think it's a really big deal for Ryan Blaney when it comes to being an owner of track going forward. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about BJ McLeod. Now, there's been a lot of rumors and speculation around a pretty interesting story surrounding BJ McLeod, and the NASCAR rumor Kasey Kahne might have confirmed it earlier this evening. There's been a lot of rumors out there that BJ McLeod is expected to join Spire Motorsports later this year in the NASCAR Craftsman Truck Series at Charlotte Motor Speedway. Now, the truck number has not been officially announced, but it sounds like the most likely number will be the 07. BJ McLeod has never been in a top opportunity. And I know Spire Motorsports this year, their truck series program has not been as strong, but Raj Kruf has almost won a couple races this year, and Kyle Busch got a win, of course, at Atlanta, and Kyle Larson also got a win with them at Homestead Miami Speedway in that same 07 truck. BJ almost a couple years ago got the opportunity to drive the number 1 car when Michael Annett was injured and had a leg injury and was out for quite some time. I think BJ McLeod driving for that team would be a great opportunity. I don't see BJ going out there and winning, but I think he will be very, very competitive, because we've never seen him get to drive a really competitive team, because he's always been in either mediocre equipment or backer marker equipment for the most part. So I really hope this truly happens. It sounds like it's likely going to happen. Again, there's a lot of good competition that's running. I think Kyle Busch is also running that race at Charlotte, so he's probably going to be the favorite to win that event. But I got to say, it's really exciting to see as someone who's worked their butt off, who's done a lot good for the sport overall. I think BJ brings a lot to the table. He brings a lot to this sport, and I really hope this is true, because he deserves this chance, man. He deserves the opportunity to be racing for a really, really good team, and I'm glad to see teams like Spire believe in him. They believe in it, because Spire got a charter from BJ. You got to remember this. They bought the charter from Live Fast Motorsports, and BJ has ownership in that team. So this probably is them returning the favor, giving him a top opportunity. It'd be awesome if he does pick up the win, but I love seeing people like him get chances. I think this could be a really big opportunity, and I hope he can have an opportunity to do good, because I think he's earned the right to get a chance to maybe get a good run with an organization like Spire, who's had a lot of success with other drivers like Carson Hocevar recently, who drove in their truck not too long ago. I'm glad to see it sounds like he will get the chance to drive for Spire Motorsports at some point this year when it comes to Charlotte at the end of the month. Really great opportunity for BJ. Hope he can have a lot of success with this team. And now we're going to jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Joey Logano. Now, earlier tonight, of course, Joey Logano was able to pick up his first Cup Series win of 2025 and his 37th career NASCAR Cup Series win. Now, this win is very significant for Joey Logano, because he has now tied Bobby Isaac on the all-time wins list in the NASCAR Cup Series, but also he has now surpassed Brad Keselowski on the all-time wins list in the NASCAR Cup Series with that win. And Joey Logano revealed some very interesting information during his post-race interview after picking up the win. He says he owes Brad Keselowski a lot. Now, why does he mention that? He says that Brad Keselowski is a major reason why Joey Logano got the chance and opportunity to drive for Team Penske. Let's go back to 2012. Joey Logano at the time was, of course, driving for Joe Gibbs Racing. And Joey had, of course, gotten a win at Pocono throughout that year. But Logano's time at Joe Gibbs Racing was not going very, very well. There have been a lot of rumors and speculation that Logano was maybe going to go to another team, perhaps, but there was an unknown uncertainty about Logano's long-term future. Many people in the sport were saying at the time, back in 2011 or 2012, that Joey Logano was considered a bust. But a lot of things changed because there was also a lot of talk that Logano was maybe going to go to Roush in 2013 at that time, or even other teams, I think even like RCR or Ganassi, I'm pretty sure. But he took the chance and opportunity to go to Penske because they felt they needed someone in that car after Sam Hornish and AJ Allmendinger never ended up really working out. Since that time, Logano, of course, has been one of the most successful drivers in the sport. Now, in recent years, Logano has not been as strong as he's been in prior years, but Logano, since joining Penske, he has been one of the most successful drivers in the team's history, and I think he's one of the winningest drivers in the team's history, too. So I think for Logano, I think that it's been incredible to see the blemish of his career and what he's been able to do. Now, obviously, we've talked about the championships in the format, and I don't agree with how he's won those championships, but you can't deny Joey Logano is one of the best drivers in the sport. And going back to his win, I want to clear something up here. Never said Logano was mad about Logano winning the race. I think Logano did what he had to do to win. I just was frustrated at the end of the event because the race wasn't good. But for Logano, going back to that, I think it's cool that he still is good friends with Keselowski, seems like, because I know they had some tension after some of the incidents that had happened on the racetrack. So I think for Logano to kind of thank Brad for that, for all the success he's had and getting the chance and opportunity to drive for them, I think that's a really big deal. So I think that's some exciting stuff for sure. And I'm glad to see that Logano recognizes Brad gave him that chance and opportunity. And I'm glad to see he did get that opportunity and chance to work with Brad Keselowski in the sport and be teammates at one of the most successful times for the Penske organization in NASCAR time. And now we're going to go ahead and jump on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Joey Logano once again and Ryan Preece. Now, earlier this week on Friday or Saturday, we of course had show and tell. Because remember last week, it was announced that both Joey Logano, who finished 5th in the NASCAR Cup Series race originally at Talladega Superspeedway, and Ryan Preece, who had finished 2nd in the NASCAR Cup Series race originally and came close to winning his first ever Cup Series event, both those drivers were disqualified after the NASCAR Cup Series event at Talladega Superspeedway. Now, the reason that Joey Logano got disqualified is because I think there was a bolt that was loose. Originally said there was a bolt that had fallen off the car. Well, it sounds like it might have just been a loose bolt that was kind of loose on the car that might have fallen off the car. I know the Live Fast is making a joke about that maybe being something from Joey Logano's car on the back of their spoiler, I'm pretty sure, but that's where they probably lost it. They actually showed that part, and you kind of can tell that, yeah, there's definitely something there, and that could make the spoiler flex, which can definitely give a massive aero advantage. Now, obviously, there are times where teams try to play the rules a little bit, and they try to basically have things like that that's intentional braking, so they can get a pretty big advantage. For Logano, of course, he got the win now at Texas, so it doesn't matter at this point, but for Logano, that was still a really big deal, so he lost a lot of points. For Ryan Preece, they did show and tell as well. Obviously, there are 3 shims that they had on the back of their car. I think that's pretty straightforward. You only can have 2 shims that are allowed on the back. They had 3. I think they found that in the tech line. I think they were trying to correct it. Apparently, they had failed pre-race inspection going into the event or pre-qualifying inspection, and they had tried to adjust the spoiler on the back. You can't really have 3 spoiler shims that are on the back of the car, because if you do, that definitely will give a pretty big advantage. And I think that's one of the reasons why Ryan Preece ends up finishing 2nd, which unfortunately affected RFK because all 3 of their cars had no points pretty much. And after today's race too at Texas, the team's definitely in a much worse position going forward. But I think for Logano and Preece, right, it's really unfortunate that things like this happen for them. But I think what's positive for NASCAR in this case is their transparency and being able to be a lot more transparent, because for many, many years, they were never transparent about a lot of these disqualifications when they started doing them, but they started doing that a lot when the next-gen car came around. So they basically showed the media, because they never really showed the media. They would show a lot of those teams what had happened, but they never really would show the media. But NASCAR nowadays, I'll give them credit for this, they are a lot more able to be a little more transparent about some of the rules that some of these teams break. And I think that's actually a really important factor, having the opportunity to show these teams exactly what they did wrong. I think that's a really big deal. And I think when you think about some of these disqualifications in the past, I think doing it and be able to show the teams what they did wrong and show the media what exactly was broken on the car or what they messed with, I think that's actually kind of an interesting thing. So I think it's pretty cool nonetheless they're showing this kind of stuff. And I hope they can continue doing this and being more transparent when it comes to stuff like this going forward, in my opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Kyle Larson. Now, Kyle Larson, of course, was running the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Texas Motor Speedway and was able to pick up his 17th career NASCAR Xfinity Series victory and I believe his 53rd National Touring win or 52nd National Touring win. Of course, he has 31 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, 17, of course, in the NASCAR Xfinity Series and 4 in the Craftsman Truck Series as well. Now, after the NASCAR Xfinity Series race had concluded, Ray Abraham, of course, was one of the greatest crew chiefs of all time, NASCAR Hall of Famer, innovator, and one of the people that led to Jeff Gordon, one of the best drivers in NASCAR history, to victory lane. Ray Abraham basically tweeted out that he says right now that Kyle Larson is the best driver on the planet at this moment right now, and you cannot tell me otherwise. That is a really big endorsement. Ray Abraham is one of the best crew chiefs. He worked with arguably the best driver in the modern era, who won 93 career NASCAR Cup Series wins, and about 50 of those came when Ray Abraham was the crew chief. In a stretch from 1995 to 1998, I believe, or 99, Jeff Gordon won 40 races during that stretch. So for Ray to praise Kyle Larson that highly, that is a big deal. And there's a lot of people that will say that Kyle Larson's great. Tony Stewart has claimed that Kyle Larson's better than him. Jeff Gordon has heavily praised Kyle Larson. I think people like Kevin Harvick, Mario Andretti has praised Kyle Larson in really big ways. I listen to people like that more than fans on Twitter. I think those kind of endorsements for some of the best in the world and some of the best ever to grace motorsports, that is a really, really big deal, and I think that's a big accomplishment for Larson. So I think that Kyle Larson is a fantastic race car driver who can wheel anything at this point, who will have a great chance and opportunity, in my opinion, to win the Indy 500 this year. He might win the pole even if he gets into fastest. He might have to go and run the All-Star race, but I think he's got a great chance to win the pole and win the race as well for the All-Star race. The other point about this is Connor Zilisch. Connor Zilisch actually spoke about Kyle Larson, was a little bitter he didn't get the chance and opportunity to run this car because of his injury, but he hopes one day that he'll get the chance and opportunity to race Kyle Larson in the NASCAR Cup Series. Connor Zilisch, in my opinion, is one of the best prospects out there. I think him and Larson are two of the most talented race car drivers on the planet. Connor, of course, has won the Rolex 24 and LMP2. He, of course, won the Sebring 12 hours LMP2. One of my dream scenarios that I would love to see down the road, I know they did the Rolex 24 with Trackhouse, but I would love to see Trackhouse do it again for the Rolex 24. But instead of having maybe like Scott McLaughlin or Ben Keating, if you want to keep Scott, fine. But honestly, put Kyle Larson behind the wheel of the GT car once again. As I know Trackhouse is interested in running the Rolex 24 again. Why not give this a possibility of happening, right? I would love to see Zilisch and Larson get to race with each other and also get to see Shane Van Gisbergen work for Larson too. I think they're three of the best racing drivers on the planet right now. And I think for Larson and Zilisch, they're really, really good. They both have had a lot of success in their respective sports, what they've been able to accomplish. And I hope we get to see Larson race Zilisch next year in Cup. It sounds like Zilisch might be a Cup Series driver next year at this time. We'll have to wait and see on that front. But I do think some big things will happen soon. But I think some of the praise of some of the people in the industry toward Larson, too, has been really awesome and really, really good, in my honest opinion. And now we're going to head on to the next story of today's episode as we're talking about Trackhouse racing. Now, Roush is saying after the NASCAR Cup Series race concluded at Texas Motor Speedway, he of course ended up finishing second during that event. But during his Fox Sports interview, there was something that was very interesting that caught me off guard a little bit. It was him talking about the fact that Trackhouse Racing has not really had this speed on Saturdays throughout the weekend, and he says that Trackhouse Racing cars have not been really, really good early in the weekend, to the point it feels like all three drivers at the team, Shane Van Gisbergen, Neil Soares, and of course Ross himself, have really, really struggled. He does say the team has made little adjustments throughout the events and have been able to help them get better throughout their time. Looking at the Trackhouse cars this year, I would have to agree with Ross. I think that Trackhouse Racing in 2025 is where Richard Childress Racing was in 2024. They're not really running that great right now, to be honest. Shane Van Gisbergen did get a top 25 today, and he's been a rookie in the series this year, but I thought SVG was going to be a little bit better. Daniel Suarez has been a little bit hit or miss at times. He's had some good runs with those cars, even on the non-road course tracks. And he also got a top 10 today at Texas, and also got a top 10 last week. So he's starting to really turn the corner and run direction. But he's supposed to run really, really good because he's in a contract here currently at the moment with the Trackhouse Racing team. And it's unknown if he's going to be back at the team, which many think he isn't going to be. And Ross is running as good as he can, but he's doing what Kyle Busch did last year. Trackhouse just doesn't have the speed right now at the moment. There's a lot of rumors and speculation about maybe Trackhouse going over to Dodge if they come to Cup. I think that's one of the reasons maybe why we're not seeing as much speed out of the Trackhouse racing cars, is because I think they're one of the teams that might go to Dodge. There's been a lot of speculation about it, and I think there's a realistic possibility that you are going to see this team go to Dodge in 2027. I think there's a very good possibility that something like that could end up happening. I think it's going to be a big story to watch out for. But I think this team has shown potential on the road courses. I think that's where their likely chances are going to be the win. Because I look at Coda. They all had a chance to win. I look at, SVG. One of the fastest cars on the long run, but couldn't get the victory. But we go to Mexico City in a few weeks, and he's probably going to have a chance to win that race with Junior Motorsports. Look what Ross did with Junior Motorsports in Xfinity. He almost went on to win that event and had one of the strongest cars in the race as well. I think if you give Ross Chastain a very competitive car and very competitive equipment too, I think he can be up there going for wins. I think just seeing Trackhouse is kind of gone back to where Ganassi was. You got to remember, Trackhouse Racing was formerly Ganassi because Trackhouse bought a lot of stuff from Ganassi. And I think as some of these teams have caught up to the Hendricks and all this other stuff with the next-gen car, the top teams like Hendrick, Gibbs, and Penske have really separated themselves at this top level, while the other teams have kind of gone down a little bit of a lower level at this point. So to me, when I think about this for Ross, I think Trackhouse still has a lot of work to do and a lot of grinding they've got to do to definitely get better. And we'll have to wait and see if that does happen for that team. But I still think this team has a lot of work to get their equipment better going forward. And I hope it does happen for Trackhouse, because I think they're a team that can get back to that big level of being where they were a few years ago if there's a few things and few changes that can be made for that program going forward. And now we're going to head jump on to the next story of today's episode, as we're talking about Carson Hocevar versus Ryan Preece. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Cup Series race at Texas Motor Speedway, you saw the incident between Carson Hocevar and Ryan Preece with around, I believe, 25 to 30 laps to go in this race. So throughout most of the event, Carson Hocevar had a really fast and strong car, and Ryan Preece had also been running really good and running in the top 10 in quite a bit of the event. But both cars, I believe, had come down pit road, had lost a ton of track position because of strategy near the end of the race, and they both were restarting in the middle of the pack. Now, of course, there was a caution that came out, I believe, for Kyle Busch prior to this, where he spun out coming down the front straightaway. Kyle Busch was running inside the top 5 before he spun out down the front straightaway. Going into the next restart, I believe Kyle Larson had a fantastic run, got the race lead, but then, of course, the caution would come out because Ryan Preece and Carson Hocevar would crash down the back straightaway. And Ryan Preece, after the race, was not very happy with Carson Hocevar about that incident. He basically spoke to Bob Pockers about the incident, and he says, "I think I know who caused the wreck. It was once again the driver of the 77, that being Carson Hocevar." And he says, "It seems like this kid and this driver has never learned, and he doesn't really have any respect for anybody out there on the racetrack with the way he races." This is not the first time that, of course, Carson Hocevar and Ryan Preece have gone into it. Let's go back a few years ago to 2022, I believe it was, at Charlotte Motor Speedway. So Carson Hocevar had the fastest truck in the race. He had dominated a majority of the event with Nice Motorsports. But going into the second last restart of the event, Carson Hocevar was trying to make a move to the inside of Ryan Preece. And of course, Ryan Preece and him had contact. Carson completely missed the corner and ran Ryan Preece's truck up into the outside wall. And Ryan Preece had the famous quote, "For all the young drivers that are wanting to learn about it, don't do that." And then, of course, that became a massive meme. And a lot of people like myself were a little critical of Preece, but after some of the incidents that Carson had, including what happened in Phoenix the next year, a lot of us were kind of agreeing with Ryan Preece about that. Carson Hocevar has a lot of talent. He's proven it. He's been one of the fastest guys when it comes to speed. But Carson Hocevar sometimes just cannot seem to get out of his own way. And again, I respect Carson Hocevar because I think he has a lot of talent. I think he's really good for the sport. He's got a lot of personality, and I think he does bring a lot to the table. He's kind of like a younger Ross Chastain, which, funny enough, Ross Chastain is a mentor to Carson Hocevar. I consider him a young Ross, who, if you give him like a top-level opportunity, he can prove it. I mean, Spire Motorsports this year, they've shown some good speed, and they've had a lot of pace throughout the early portion of the event. But they do make a lot of mistakes out there, that being, of course, Carson. They just are not able to keep their nose clean, and Carson from time to time is causing wrecks that don't need to be happening. They're causing a lot of crashes that happen out on the track. And I think some of these incidents are honestly completely avoidable on Carson's end, because some of these things just shouldn't be happening that are happening on the racetrack, and it's unfortunate costing drivers great finishes. I mean, Ryan Preece is below the cutoff line right now. Carson Hocevar, who had a great chance to be in the playoffs right now because of his momentum going into the race, he's lost a lot of that momentum because of the mistakes he's making out on the racetrack. If Carson could just clean up some of these incidents on the track going forward and could just be a little more consistent and not be over his head sometimes, I think he would be a winner in the series. I generally think Carson has the potential to be a Cup winner and down the road a Cup Series champion. But he's got to clean up some of these incidents that he's causing on the racetrack and pissing off drivers when it comes to wrecking him for wins. No, not for wins, but wrecking him for good finishes at the end because of frustration. I don't think that's really acceptable on Carson's part. He's got to clean this up because there's not a lot of respect for Carson in the field. I know a lot of drivers have spoken to Carson about the way he races. I know Carson has said publicly many times that he doesn't want to change the way he races sometimes, and I do respect Carson for that, because I know Carson wants to race the way that he wants to race anybody, but at the same time, if he's going to want to be successful long term, I think he's got to clean up some of the stuff and some of the antics on the racetrack if he wants to be long-term successful. Now, that being said, I don't want him to turn down the personality. I just want him to get focused on the racetrack and do what he needs to do to get better on there so he can be as successful, because I think he's a great driver. He's very, very good and one of the best raw talents I think we've seen in recent years in NASCAR. In my honest opinion, I think he's one of the best raw talents we've seen in recent years in this sport. And now we're going to jump on to the first of two major stories in today's episode as we're talking about Kris Wright. Now, if you watched the NASCAR Xfinity Series race at Texas Motor Speedway, you saw what happened near the end of the race with around 40 to 45 laps to go in this event. So setting the scene for you. Throughout this race, there's been two cars that have been the strongest. Justin Allgaier, who had led about 100 laps in this race, and Kyle Larson, who is coming back through a speeding penalty. Now, during technically the final green flag pit stops of the race, with around 50 laps to go, Justin Allgaier had a little bit of a slower pit stop compared to Kyle Larson, and Kyle Larson would have the advantage coming off of pit road. But the green flag pit stop was still going on. Meanwhile, as they were coming down the front straightaway going into turn number 3, Kris Wright, who was 5 seconds off the pace, kept changing lanes in front of Justin Allgaier, and there would be a crash that happened coming off of turn number 4 as Justin Allgaier would run in the back of Kris Wright. Kris Wright would get a ton of damage on the back. It was already 5 or 6 laps down in the race, and Justin Allgaier's car would be completely destroyed. His race would come to an end. Now, Justin Allgaier did not throw Kris Wright under the bus. He actually took accountability and responsibility for the wreck, and he said he was at fault for what happened on the racetrack, saying he should never have been there to begin with. Now, let's talk about the driver itself and talk about the incident. To me, this is one of the most egregious incidents I think I've seen in a long time in motorsports, and one of the dumbest things I've probably seen when it comes to racing. I looked at the lap times for Kris Wright during the laps. Justin Allgaier was running around 30 to 31 second laps. Kris Wright was running an average of 35.3 to like 35.5 throughout that time. And Steven Sun put those charts out as well on Twitter. And the laps were not even consistent either. He was all over the place on the racetrack. Earlier in the race, Kris Wright had almost wrecked the eventual winner of the race, Kyle Larson. Larson had to avoid him and lost a ton of time because Kris Wright could not hold his line. He was all over the place, zigging and zagging, could not stay straight across the racetrack. And we all many people criticized Catherine Legge for the incident of what happened in Rockingham. But guess what? Catherine Legge was not off by 5 seconds like Kris Wright was. Kris Wright was off by like 3 or 4 seconds off the pace. I don't understand how Kris Wright was making minimum speed in that incident. And if this was the first time that Kris Wright had done something like this, and had not done anything else that was really egregious throughout the season, I don't think I'd be this critical of Kris Wright. But Kris Wright has been a nuisance and basically someone who has just been a liability on the racetrack all year long. When it was announced he was going to be in this car, I think I said this on the channel, I could be wrong. I think he said he was going to cause some sort of incident that was going to be, there was going to be a lot of wrecks with this car and a lot of crashed equipment. Let's begin at the beginning of the year. Kris Wright, in the first 3 races, had incidents with Josh Bilicki. He literally missed coming to pit road, blamed the spotter for the incident, by the way, was coming way too fast down pit road, and destroys Josh Bilicki and destroys his car. One of the dumbest things I've ever seen. The newer version of Kevin LePage, except it's coming to pit road instead of coming off pit road. Then, of course, you have what happened in Atlanta, where you can make an argument for both sides, but I think that Kris Wright was the one coming down the racetrack, but Josh Bilicki was blamed by that for Kris on X. Then he had the incident, which we never got full evidence at COTA, but from what I understand, Josh Bilicki got wrecked by Kris Wright in that incident. And there's been other times where Kris Wright throughout this year has caused incidents. There has to be a time and place, and there needs to be a certain point where there needs to be an evaluation on these drivers. I don't know Kris Wright personally, but Kris Wright has not taken accountability on social media. And it's not like Kris Wright is like 25 or even 20. Kris Wright is 31 years old. He is 6 years older than me. And this guy is driving like an idiot. He is one of the slowest cars on the racetrack. Just to put this in perspective, the previous driver of this car, Anthony Alfredo, had 15th place finish in points, 2 top 5, 7 top 10s. Kris Wright has 1 finish above 24th, only 4 top 25 finishes this year, and that top 10 was Martinsville, a race that we don't even talk about, and it doesn't really prove if you're talented or not. Kris Wright should not be in that car, and I really hope that there is some talk about getting it out there because it's ridiculous, because he cost a driver who should have been up there going for the win on Saturday. Instead, we've got to talk about the stupid driver behind the wheel, and no offense to Kris Wright. I don't know the dude personally, but Kris Wright is just driving like an idiot on the racetrack. It was one of the dumbest things I've ever seen. I was just flabbergasted. I was shocked. I couldn't believe that something like that was allowed to happen. He needs to be out of that car. I hope that Our Motorsports is watching this video and they make the decision to take him out of that car. He needs to be out. There needs to be a lot of talk about this because there needs to be some accountability from that team from putting him in that car. I really hope by the time we get to Charlotte in a couple weeks that they've got him out of that car. The problem is, Kris Wright has a lot of sponsorship from the capital company that his family owns. That's why he's in the car in the first place. And why Anthony Alfredo is not behind the wheel of that race car. Can we get Kyle Weatherman a call for that car, please? Can we get Brett Moffitt a call for that car? Because if you put those two guys in there, I guarantee you they outscore Kris Wright within 3 or 4 races. I guarantee you. Kris Wright should not be in that car. He is the new version of Connor Jones. Except Connor Jones, I think, is more of a punk, personally, than Kris Wright is. But Kris Wright has driven way in over his head, and he shouldn't be in that race car. He shouldn't be out there. He's a liability on the racetrack. So I really hope that some things happen. I hope NASCAR is looking at this. I don't know if he needs his license revoked, but I think he should go back to ARCA or go back into another series and try to have success. Because it's inexcusable at this point what's happening out there, and he should not be behind the wheel of a race car with the way he drives. We all talk about how bad Hailie Deegan was, but she wasn't that far off the pace in these races, by the way. So I really hope for Kris, he gets out of that seat, and they put someone who's more talented behind the wheel going forward, in my opinion. And now we're going ahead, jump on to the final major story of today's episode as we're talking about Kasey Kahne once again. Now, we have talked a lot about Kasey Kahne on the channel over the course of the last couple weeks. A big reason for that is because Kasey Kahne made his return to NASCAR 2 or 3 weeks ago at Rockingham Speedway. Now, Kasey Kahne qualified very, very well inside the top 5 and was running very well in the event. But unfortunately for Kasey Kahne, he got caught up in an incident after it looked like he was going to be a major factor for the win. Now, there definitely is a chance possibly he might have gotten disqualified because of the fact that Jesse Love, who won the race, would end up getting disqualified later that evening. And if Kasey Kahne won, he might have gotten disqualified as well, just like his teammate Jesse Love would have been. But going back to Kasey Kahne, he spoke after that race and he said he might be interested in making another return. Now, Kasey Kahne this week, of course, was the honorary pace car driver for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Texas Motor Speedway. And Kasey Kahne spoke to the media and was asked questions about whether or not he might be open to making some more starts in NASCAR in 2025 in the Xfinity Series. He says he is down in the future, that he might want to come back and make some more starts in NASCAR. He doesn't exactly know if he's going to make more starts in 2025, but he says he does plan in the future to make more starts in the sport because he said he enjoyed his time at Rockingham Speedway and enjoyed the fanfare as well. I really hope that Kasey Kahne gets a chance and opportunity to make more starts in the sport going forward. I think there's a lot of opportunities here. Number one, I think if he got the opportunity to drive for Richard Childress Racing, that'd be a fantastic opportunity. Say what you want to say about the team. he ran really, really good with that program. Was very fast in the test session in Rockingham. He tested the car at Charlotte Motor Speedway, did really good there. One of the fastest cars on the track in that event. Had it not been for the incident with Catherine Legge and William Swalch, I think he could have had a chance and opportunity to go out there and maybe perhaps win, or at least get a top 2 or top 3, because I think he had a really, really good car and had a chance to go to victory lane. And of course, that car had Kyle Busch last year, which Kyle Busch had a chance to win an opportunity to get that win at Charlotte in the Xfinity Series. But I do think that he could run really good with RCR, and I know he says that if he would run it again, he probably would do it with RCR and HendrickCars.com sponsorship once again, which I think that'd be really cool if that did end up happening. I think there's another really big opportunity, though, that could help him get the chance. The big opportunity is Junior Motorsports. Now, there are a couple opportunities here. Number one, the 88 car, Connor Zilisch. Right now, we talked about this. I know Connor Zilisch has publicly said that he does want to return at Charlotte Motor Speedway for a couple reasons. Number one, he wants to be back so he can get back behind the wheel of a race car a lot sooner. But the second reason is because he does want to run that double. He's supposed to run the Coca-Cola 600 and the Xfinity Series race on the same weekend and make his oval debut in the NASCAR Cup Series in about 2 or 3 weeks from now. Now, I think there's a very good chance, though, that Connor Zilisch will be back, and I think the doctors will likely approve him to make a comeback. But I think there's another opportunity with JRM, and that's the number 9 car. Junior Motorsports hasn't running the number 9 car this year for a couple of events. They ran it for Ross Chastain Dakota. Ross had one of the fastest cars in the race. Unfortunately, Ross got a speeding penalty and finished just outside the top 10, or just barely inside the top 10. Then Ross ran that car at Darlington about a month or so ago, and Ross did really good, had one of the strongest cars, was actually leading the race near the end, but lost track position. But he did come back and finish inside the top 5. I think he finished runner-up or 3rd place in the race and ran exceptional and really, really good, and said he was really happy to be driving a car that Hendrick support with it. And Ross is going to make a few more starts in that car this year. And also Shane Van Gisbergen is going to make a few starts in that car as well. He's going to run Watkins Glen at the end of the year. He is going to run Sonoma, Chicago, and Mexico City in the Xfinity Series. And also Connor Mosack, it was announced recently, will be driving that car at the Charlotte Roval. We might see some drivers like a Roger Krug or someone along those lines get the chance and opportunity to drive that car at some point as well. I would absolutely love to see the opportunity for a guy like Kasey Kahne to drive the 9. The 9 is so iconic to Kasey. Thinking about success for Kasey, right? His first big success was in that 9 car. He almost won a bunch of races as a rookie in 2004. He got his first career cup win in the number 9 machine in 2005. And then in 2006, won 6 or 7 races and had a lot of success in that car. I think if he got the chance and opportunity to drive that car, I think he generally would be very, very successful and be very, very quick. Because the Junior Motorsports cars right now in the Xfinity Series, they have been very fast and really, really strong. And those cars are very, very quick and really good. So I think it'd be pretty awesome if he got that chance to drive that car. But going back to Kasey Kahne, it's been really cool to see former retired drivers come out of the sport and get opportunities to race once again. In recent years, we've seen drivers like Ryan Newman make a couple starts with teams like Rickwell Racing. You think about Greg Biffle has had the opportunity to drive for a team like NY Racing. And I know there's been a lot of talk in recent years about Carl Edwards or even Kurt Busch making a return. But Kurt Busch, he's open to making a return down the road. You know, he said that recently in recent years. And there's been a lot of talk about whether Carl's going to maybe get behind the wheel of a race car for a long time. It sounds like it's not going to happen. He was given an offer to do it during the Indy 500 time when Larson was going to be qualifying for the Indy 500 with, of course, the North Wilkes race going on. But I know that it sounds like Allgaier is probably going to be the reserve driver for that car, at least during the time. I know Larson was interested in giving it to Carl. He gave him the opportunity. I know that Dale Jr. was trying to egg Carl on to get behind the wheel. But I don't know if that's going to happen. But I want to see more guys that have been gone for a long time, like a Jimmy Johnson who got the chance and opportunity, get behind the wheel of the next-gen car. I'd love to see Kasey Kahne make starts in the NASCAR Cup Series. I think that'd be really, really cool if something like that could happen. And I think Kasey Kahne could be pretty competitive. I know it's been a long time since he's raced on a full-time stint. I know Kasey Kahne is not interested in being a full-time driver in the Cup Series right now, but I would love to see him make a Cup start. RCR is going to have that 33 car for quite a few races this year. So why not give him a chance and opportunity to drive a NASCAR Cup Series car? I think that'd actually be a really fun opportunity for Kasey Kahne. I think he could be very competitive, and I do think he generally could be really, really fast because he was really good in Xfinity. And I get it's been almost a decade because the last time he ran a Cup was 2018. But I think it'd be pretty awesome if he got that chance to drive a NASCAR Cup Series car once again in the future. But we'll have to wait and see what happens in regards long term on whether or not we could see someone like a Kasey Kahne make a comeback and return and make more starts. And hope it happens in 2025 and also in 2026 as well. I'd love to see it happen where he makes one more start this year and make more starts in 2026. Because the guy, he looks very healthy. He still looks about the same as he did in 2018. He doesn't really age that much. But I think for Kasey Kahne, it'd be awesome if something like that could happen. I really hope we do get to see the chance and opportunity for Kasey Kahne. Just like we've seen Cletus McFarland make starts and might take some starts in NASCAR this year. Hope we can see Kasey Kahne make more starts in the sport in 2025 and also make some starts in the 2026 NASCAR season as well. Whether it's the Cup Series, the Xfinity Series, or Truck Series, I really hope it does happen for Kasey Kahne going forward at some point this year. So, that is going to be it for today's long NASCAR news and motorsports news episode. I want to thank you guys for watching. Please subscribe to the channel, notifications on, so if I win a video, it does go live on my channel. Follow me on Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and support me on Patreon as well. Listeners on board with that, and comment your thoughts below on today's episode. You think Kasey Kahne will make more starts in NASCAR? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. And what are thoughts about all their stories talked about today on the channel, including the Kris Wright story? Let me your thoughts in the comments below. If any major news breaks later today, we'll discuss it live on the channel. If not, the next time you're going to see me is tomorrow, where we're going to have the entry list for the NASCAR Cup Series race at Kansas. We're also, of course, going to have the race picks for the Truck Series race. Might just actually push that to Wednesday. And then, of course, we will have a NASCAR news video dropping. And Thursday, we're going to have a NASCAR Cup race review, race picks for the Cup Series race at Kansas for the Evan Health 400 and the paint scheme video as well. And then on Friday, we'll have a NASCAR news video. And, of course, we'll probably do maybe a video on the ARCA race, but I'm not sure at this point. And then on Saturday and Sunday, we're going to have reviews for the Truck Series and the Cup Series race. Xfinity is off this week, and we're going to have a silly season update dropping, I believe, on Saturday as well. Got content coming up here like Haley Diggin, Shane Gisberg Cards, Kurt Busch, Kyle Busch, Bubba Walls, Connor Zillis, Junior Motorsports, Charlotte Crate, Sam Mayer, Cletus McFarland, Matt Benedetto, Dodge, Honda, all the good stuff we'll be talking about on the channel. Same with Chase Elliott as well in the coming days and weeks. So anyways, like I said, I want to thank you guys for watching today's episode, and I'll see you guys next time for more great awesome NASCAR content and other motorsports content on the channel like this. Take care, buddy.